Hello, welcome to Rays of Sports. Today, we are taking a look at the top 15 Manchester United players with the highest salaries for the 2023 to 2024 season. Manchester United are splashing massive amounts of money on player wages. A staggering 8 players are on at least £200,000 per week. Stay tuned as we find out who are the money men in Manchester United. At number 15, we have Victor Lindelof. He earns £120,000 per week. Throughout his time at Old Trafford, Victor Lindelof has never really looked like much of a star, so it's surprising to see just how much money he's on at the club. Having signed in 2017, he actually earned an extension in 2019, which hasn't aged too well. He's been serviceable enough for the club, but never really excelled. His current deal expires in the summer, and it's hard to imagine they'll be rushing to offer him a new one, especially if it's anywhere close to the level of money he's currently on. Number 14. Andre Onana. He earns £120,000 per week. Replacing David De Gea was a tall task, but Andre Onana was the man selected for the job after working closely with Ten Hag at Ajax in the past. The two had seen great success together already, so it wasn't too surprising that he came to Old Trafford on a fairly sizable wage. He'd also impressed at Inter Milan last season, so he definitely earned the opportunity and the salary that went with it. It's been a shaky debut campaign in England so far for the shot stopper, with several calamitous mistakes under his belt, but there's plenty of time for him to turn things around, and he's shown glimpses of brilliance at times too. His £120,000 per week salary is also about 3 times cheaper than what the Spaniard was on at United too, so that's a bonus. Number 13. Donny van de Beek. He earns £120,000 per week. 1 year before he joined United, Donny van de Beek was nominated for the Ballon d'Or award, and he was one of the most highly sought-after young midfielders in football. He was handed a huge salary when he moved to Old Trafford, earning £120,000 per week right off the bat, but his time in England has been an absolute catastrophe, to say the least. He's barely had a look in at United for years now, and has spent the majority of his time at the club watching from the stands than he has on the pitch. It's a wild amount of money to pay a player who features so little, and there's no doubt the Red Devils would like a do-over on this one. Number 12. Lisandro Martinez. He earns £120,000 per week. One of Ten Hag's first signings, Lisandro Martinez had previously worked with the manager at Ajax and proved he could work alongside him successfully. That's why he was offered £120,000 per week right off the bat, and last season, he looked well worthy of the deal. He's a solid centre-back and one that instantly improves the Red Devils whenever he's available. The issue this season is his lack of fitness and the large spells he's now spent out injured on the sideline. Once he's fit and healthy, he'll almost certainly justify his lofty wages, though, and the club will be much better off once he gets back on the pitch. If he plays like he did last year, he might even earn a pay rise in the future. Number 11. Christian Eriksen. He earns £150,000 per week. After proving he could still compete in the Premier League at Brentford, United signed Christian Eriksen on a free contract in the summer of 2022 and handed him a salary of £150,000 per week. That hasn't aged all that well, as the Danish midfielder looks well past his best this season. He's shown his age and clearly lost a step this campaign, and the club has struggled to really find any sort of winning formula with him in the middle of the park. His defensive vulnerabilities have harmed them on more than one occasion, and paying him such a significant amount of money to offer very little is quite a glaring mistake. He's got just over 18 months left on his current deal, and we can't imagine he'll be offered another. Number 10. Luke Shaw. He earns £150,000 per week. Sticking with the theme of United players who got off to poor starts but have turned things around, Luke Shaw is one of the most solid and consistent performers at the club. That's something not many will have seen coming after a disastrous first few seasons at Old Trafford. His rejuvenation at the club earned him a brand new deal just this summer, as he signed an extension to keep him at the club until 2027. his new deal saw his salary bumped to £150,000 per week, and once he's back healthy, he'll no doubt prove his worth every penny as he continues to be key to the majority of the Red Devils' success. Number 9. Harry Maguire. He earns £190,000 per week. If you'd have told United fans at the start of the season that Harry Maguire would actually be playing like he's worth the £190,000 per week salary he's on, you'd have been laughed at. The Englishman has spent the majority of his time at Old Trafford struggling, but this season he's found a semblance of form and benefited from the injury crisis that the club has had at the back. His astronomical wages have looked like a nightmare for the longest time, but with his form this year so far, he's actually justifying it somewhat. Time will only tell whether he can keep up his solid performances and continue turning his career around in Manchester, but if he does, he might earn another nice payday once his current deal expires in 2025. Number 8. Antony. He earns £200,000 per week. The last player at United to be making at least £200,000 per week, Antony's brief time in Manchester hasn't gone swimmingly, to say the least. The former Ajax man has already become a polarizing figure at Old Trafford, and there are large portions of the club's fan base who would likely want him out of the team already. They paid a huge fee for him just last season, though, and it's pretty clear that Ten Hag is more than prepared to give him plenty of time to turn things around. It just remains to be seen whether he's capable or not. The Red Devils faithful will want a hint of something positive soon, though. Number 7. Bruno Fernandez. He earns £240,000 per week. After a rough stretch of players, we are finally at one who's more than justified his wage since arriving in England. Bruno Fernandez has been a superb signing for United and is one of the club's best players and most creative forces right now. His leadership skills have been questioned, but there's no denying how important he's been to the club. His £240,000 per week salary actually looks a little cheap in comparison to some of the names that are making more than him at Old Trafford. With just over 2 years left on his current deal, Fernandez might be due a new one in the future, and his salary might rise even further at that point. Number 6. Jadon Sancho. He earns £250,000 per week. Jadon Sancho was one of the most exciting young footballers in the world at Borussia Dortmund, and it was viewed as a major coup for United when they managed to sign him in the summer of 2021. He was immediately handed a huge wage, but considering the promise he'd shown and the number of teams interested in him at the time, it didn't really raise too many eyebrows. Barely over a year on, though, and it's been an absolute disaster. The Englishman hasn't played or even trained with the first team for months after a public falling out with Ten Hag and has been making his £250,000 per week salary just to sit at home and do his own thing. If there's one player the club will want to get off the books, it's Sancho. Number 5. Anthony Martial. He earns £250,000 per week. At one point, Anthony Martial was considered one of the most promising strikers in the world, but that hasn't been the case for quite some time now. He's been ineffectual in front of goal for years at United and never consistently shown that he has what it takes to lead the front line for the club. After plenty of chances, they've seemingly had enough too, with a recent report revealing that he will not be offered a new deal at Old Trafford once his current one expires in the summer, and we're not surprised. He's costing the club £250,000 per week, an insane amount of money, and it's hard to imagine he'll make anything like that again in his next move. Number 4. Mason Mount. He earns £250,000 per week. One of the Red Devils' marquee signings this summer, Mason Mount joined the club from Chelsea for a fairly sizable fee and was instantly made one of the side's highest-earning players in the process. The deal raised eyebrows at the time, with the Englishman's poor form at Stamford Bridge last season brought up, but that didn't stop United from splashing the cash on him. Injuries have really restricted him from having a real run in the side just yet, and when he has featured, he's not really had the impact he'd have liked. Mount looks more like the man who struggled at Chelsea last season than the promising star he once appeared to be. Still, for £250,000 a week, Ten Hag better hope he figures things out pretty soon. Number 3. Marcus Rashford. He earns £300,000 per week. If you'd have asked any United fan in the summer when Marcus Rashford signed his new deal, they'd have said he earned every penny, and they would have been thrilled to see him sign a long-term extension at Old Trafford. After all, he was coming off a superb season last year, his best yet, in fact. This campaign has been completely different, though, and the Englishman has been a shell of the player that earned the lucrative new deal. Instead, he's even fallen out of favour with Ten Hag and has been dropped from the starting lineup after a run of poor performances saw his value to the side significantly decrease. There's obviously plenty of time for Rashford to turn things around, and hopefully, he does, as another 5 years on £300,000 with the form he's currently in could get very ugly. Number 2. Raphael Varon, he earns £340,000 per week. Another former Madrid superstar who joined United and looked like a smart piece of business, Raphael Varon moved to Manchester in the summer of 2021. The Frenchman was once one of the best defenders in the world, but he isn't quite that same player these days and has struggled to find a consistent spot in the lineup this year. The 30-year-old still has plenty of time to turn things around, but he's hardly justifying the eye-watering £340,000 per week contract that he's currently on at Old Trafford. There are suggestions he'll be leaving in the near future anyway, which, considering the money he's on, could be a wise move from Ten Hag. Number 1. Casemiro, he earns £350,000 per week. Signed from Real Madrid in the summer of 2022 after several incredible years in Spain, Casemiro was a major addition to the United squad and looked like a star in his debut campaign in England. He was paid as such too, making more money per week than anyone else in the squad. This season, though, he's taken a step back in comparison to his previous form, and his role in the first team has taken a hit as a result. If he doesn't pick things up soon, his lofty wages will be hard to justify, and considering his £350,000 per week contract runs until 2026 when he'll be 34 years old, this deal could eventually look pretty darn ugly. So, there you have it. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Until next time, this is Rays of Sports. Thanks for watching.